Hi, everybody. My name's Tom Allen, Principal Consultant with Foresite, and this is Foresite Friday. Foresite Friday is where our security and compliance experts take your questions and we answer them. Today's question, it's regarding the PCI compliance. So the payment card industry has their own compliance that if you take credit cards, you have to abide by and you have to report on. In the very near future, PCI is going to come out. Their current version is version 3.2.1. They're going to come out with version 4.0. So the question is, what changes can we expect for version 4.0? First of all, timeline. We're expected to see the actual text of 4.0 in the fall of 2020. And generally speaking, we'll probably be auditing to it by probably mid-2021. You know, everyone wants to know what's going to be in it, what's the changes, what's going to be different. Now, as a qualified security assessor, which is what PCI auditors are called, I can tell you they don't give us much info ahead of time. You can read the tea leaves and you could see from other things they say and so forth where they're going with this. So let's look at a couple things that we kind of believe are going to be in the new version. First of all, we think they're going to add some flexibility. So in the current version, you either meet the control or you don't. If you don't, then you have to do what's called a compensating control. Now, the thing about compensating controls is that they need to go above and beyond the prescripted control. What we're thinking is that they're going to have a framework for customized implementations. And what that's going to mean is that the assessor has to decide, does this meet the intent of the control? It doesn't have to be the letter of the law anymore, where either it meets it or it doesn't, and if it doesn't, you have to go above and beyond. If it meets the intent, you're going to be able to pass that control. So that's a good thing. Another thing that we know they're working on based on work they're already doing with Europay is implementing the new NIST standards for passwords. So if you're not familiar with that, passwords have always had the same sort of, they must be complex, they must be upper and lower, they must change every 90 days, so forth. The bottom line is that the new NIST standard is that you can relax some of those complexities, especially if you're using multi-factor. So if you have a code that gets sent to your phone via an application, or if you have a smart card or some secondary way of proving it besides a password, then we can relax some of those standards and make passwords easier, because we all know that it's a big problem for people to remember so many passwords, to change them all the time, and people reuse passwords because they can't remember them and things like that. So I do believe, and it seems to be indicated, that it's going to be a little less stringent on the password complexity, especially if you're doing some type of multi-factor. The next change I really hope happens because it's really good. So under the monitoring category, more risk-based decisions. What's happened in the past is the technology has advanced past the standard. So PCI may release a standard such as 3.0, and then it takes a 3 to 4 year cycle before they update that to 4.0. In that time, technology advances much faster. You want to see, as technology changes, you want to see it get adopted, because that's going to make you more secure. So they're going to hopefully tear down these barriers and say, this is a risk approach. If what you're doing isn't in the text of the DSS, but it mitigates the risk, then go ahead and do it. Another thing that they're probably going to do, and we saw this in 3.0, and it's just ramping up more and more, is what we call continuous testing. So in the old versions, you had to do a quarterly vulnerability scan. Well, that's great. So I do my vulnerability scan on July 1st. It's fine. And then July 2nd, there's a known new vulnerability that hits on my product. And now I don't do my scan again till September, end of September. So now I've got 89 days where I'm completely vulnerable to this vulnerability because I don't scan again for 3 months. I think what we're going to see, and the technology has advanced to be able to do this, what's called continuous vulnerability scanning. Daily IT and InfoSec people will get reports, and if there's a new vulnerability, you'll know about it immediately. You'll be able to mitigate it. Then finally, the other thing I think is going to change is, for years, we've talked about perimeters. So we've talked about the PCI zone, and this is this little gated community where the PCI data lives. If you've been following technology the past few years, everyone's talking about what's called zero trust. So you used to say, this little gated community, I trust everything in there. That's my trust zone. Everything that's outside of there, that's untrusted. So now I need controls to make sure nothing untrusted gets in that isn't allowed and so forth. With zero trust, we're basically saying that nothing's trusted, even within the confines of that zone. I think we're going to see more and more of that kind of thing where if you've got the crown jewels on this one server, then we're going to say, hey, I don't care what zone it's in. You need to specifically deny traffic and deny things that aren't allowed and allow things that are allowed and so forth. I think it's going to break it down to a more micro segmentation that way. So those are the things that I think are coming in the new PCI. Again, I can't say for sure. What we're looking at is added flexibility so that you can meet the intent of the control, harmonizing the password controls with the NIST guidance, a little more risk-based and a little less prescriptive, continuous testing instead of quarterly or annual pen test or whatever, and then zero trust within the PCI zone. That was a great question. If you would like your question used on Foresite Friday, please send an email to wfh@foresite.com. Thanks, everyone.